Hi everyone, Nicholas Buffett here from the Junior Senior School here in sunny Cyprus, back with another Excel tutorial, and this one's all about one of the most popular functions in Excel, the lookup functions. We're going to be looking at lookup, V or vertical lookup, H or horizontal lookup, and then we're going to be looking at the brand new XLOOKUP function, which kind of replaces the previous three. Now, the XLOOKUP function is available only on the 2019 version, but if you're on a previous version of Excel, that's absolutely fine. You can download and install the add-in, so you too can use the XLOOKUP function. In the description below, you will find timestamp links, so you can jump to the section or the function you're most interested in learning about. Let's begin. Okay, so let's first of all understand what a lookup function does. Essentially what it does, you have a value which you want to look up in a table. Think about when you were a student, or if you are a student, you've got your student ID number and you want to find out whether you passed ICT, for example. So you would essentially go somewhere where there's a table. You would look up in that table, you will find the column that contains all the student ID numbers, you will find your ID number, and then you will go to the appropriate column for ICT and see if you passed. That's exactly what the lookup function does. So as a quick example, here's a table here which is all about books, and we can see each column has got another piece of information about a book, the author, title, book reference, so on and so forth. Now, if I want to find the author of a book or a price of a book, then I need to be able to identify the book. So I would use the book reference number. So let's say I'm looking for the author of the book, which is the reference number A0012, A0012. So I'm going to put that here. So K5, this cell here, holds the information that I'm looking for. Then I would go to the column which has the book reference numbers, which is this one, try and find a match, A0012, here it is here. And then I would need to know which column has the information that I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for the price, let's say, I will go to column G and I will get the corresponding value for A0012. If I wanted the author, then I will go to column A and get the corresponding value in that column. Bill Bryson. Okay, so that's essentially what the lookup function does. Let's go create our first lookup functions. I've got here a table with scores. So this is a range of scores and the different level grades from different areas. For example, in the UK, you've got A, B, C, D, F. In Cyprus, you've got out of 20, so on and so forth. And I've just got some different types of level grades. On the left-hand side, I've got the student name and I've got the score. That could be an average score and then the year score. I want to find the grade that Kirsty gets. So essentially, I've got the value that I want to look up, which is this one here. I'm going to use this value and search for an approximate, or there's different ways of saying this, a closest match or a range lookup inside this range of values here. Now, once I've found a match, I'm going to return the corresponding value depending on which level grade I want. Do I want a UK grade, a Cyprus grade, an Estonia grade, or other? So let's begin and I'll explain as we go along. So the first thing that I need to do is to start the lookup function. So equals to lookup. And I open the brackets. And here I can see I need three parameters: a lookup value, the lookup vector, that's the column we're going to try and find the match, and then the result vector, well, that's the column that's going to return the results. Now, keep in mind that the lookup vector and the results vector have to be of equal size. Otherwise, you will get an error. So the lookup value is going to be this value here. I'm trying to find the grade for Kirsty, and Kirsty's score is 59. I'm going to press comma now, because that means I have finished entering the lookup value, and I'm moving over to the next parameter. The next parameter is the lookup vector. This is my lookup vector. And then as soon as I press comma, that's now going to ask for the result vector. So I need to choose which column I want to return a result from. So if I want to return a UK grade, I select this column here. If I want a column from other, this one here. I'm just going to use a UK grade from here now. So I'm going to choose that. Now, because I know I'm going to be copying this formula down, I need to make this cell range an absolute reference and this cell range an absolute reference. And if you don't know what cell references are, I'm going to have a reference at the bottom in the description to a video where I actually have a tutorial on absolute, mixed and relative references. So make sure you watch that. Absolute references and relative references are very, very important in Excel. Okay, I'm going to close the brackets, and that simply means I'm finished with my function. I'm going to press enter. Okay, this gives me a D. Now, how does it calculate this? Well, essentially, it does this. It takes the lookup value, which is this one here, 59. And then it goes to this section here, and it tries to find a match for 59. Now, because this is a closest match, and lookup can only do searches using numbers. What it's going to do is going to take this 59 and it's going to find the number from this vector here, which is closest to the number 59, equal to the number 59, but not bigger than the number 59. So essentially, the closest number is this one here, 60. But 60 is larger than the number 59. So it's going to go for that one. And that's the one it's going to choose. So it's going to say it falls in this range here, and it's going to return the value D, because this is the one that we chose. We chose the UK vector for the results. I don't need the absolute references if I'm doing just one lookup, but because I'm going to copy this down for the rest of them, this is where the absolute references were needed. And if we have a look here for this number here, 60, it's come to the table, and what it does, it tries to find the closest number possible again. And this time the closest number possible is actually the number 60. So it looks for the closest number. Well, it first looks to find a match, an exact match. And if it doesn't find an exact match, it's going to look for the number which is closest to it, but not larger. And in this case, it's exact. It's a C, and that gives me C. Okay, so that's the lookup function. But before I go on, let me just show you how you can use a different kind of vector as well. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to type my lookup function again. Equals to lookup, open brackets. I'm going to be looking up this value here, comma. I'm only going to show one example, so I'm not going to use absolute references. The value, the column which I'm going to use for my lookup again is going to be the same, comma, that ends the selection of the lookup vector. But this time I want to return the Estonia grade, that one there. And I'm going to press, close my brackets and press enter. So before a 59 fell in this category here, there you go, it fell on the 50, it was a D. This time it's returning a 2. You can see that that's a 2 because it's taken from this vector here. So that's the lookup function. Let's have a look at the lookup function, but this time instead of a vertical lookup, we're going to look here for a horizontal lookup. Okay, so we can see here exactly the same as before, but this time the score runs across instead of down. Now with the lookup function, you don't really need to make any changes because the lookup vector and the result vector are separate. They're two different selections. And I say this because later when we see the VLOOKUP in the next step, it's actually one selection. So again, this will be exactly the same, equals to lookup, open brackets. I'm going to be looking up for this value here, comma. And now I want my lookup vector. That's going to be the range of cells which I'm going to use to try and find a match for this score. That's going to be this one, comma. And then it wants the result vector, and that is essentially which row this time contains the results I want to return. So if now I want, let's say, the CY grade, I'm going to choose that vector there. And this is the beautiful thing about the lookup vector, because the lookup vector and the results vector doesn't have to be side by side, or you can choose any one very easily, just by selecting the area you want. So now if I close the brackets, and in fact I'm going to add my absolute references so I can copy that down using the F4 button. There we go. So the 59, which was a D for the UK, there it is there. For the Cyprus grading system, that's a 17. Okay, so this time we're looking horizontally, and we can copy that down. Let's double click. Okay, and 95 of course is a maximum, and that's a 20. There it is there. Okay, so that's the lookup. Let's move on now to have a look at the VLOOKUP function. The function or the purpose of the lookup is exactly the same. We have a value, we want to compare that value to a table or to a range of cells that we want to try and find the closest match, and then we've got some results and we want to choose where we want to get the results from. So let's have a look and see what the VLOOKUP function requires. Equals to VLOOKUP, open brackets. Now here we can see we've got slightly more things, slightly more parameters that are required. The first one is the lookup value. So again, that's my lookup value. That's the value that I want to look up, comma. Now this time, instead of indicating which one is the lookup vector and which one is the lookup, the results vector, we choose the entire table. Now, if I want to return the UK grade, I only need to choose this section here. By default, Excel will always use the first column, this one here, for the lookup. For example, if I want to get the results for UK or for Cyprus or for Estonia, I have to include that one there. So if this is my table, automatically the lookup column is going to be this one, the first one. You don't have a choice in this. You can't tell it to start looking up from here when you select that table. So this is where the VLOOKUP falls a little short. And we're going to see this next. The next thing that we do is, since the table range that we select is this one, we then need to indicate which column do we want to use to return a value from. So this table here has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you want the answers to come from column 2, then you would use the number 2. If you want the answers to come from column 4, let's say Estonia, you will put the number 4. That essentially is the VLOOKUP. So let's just have a quick look at that. So I'm going to click in here, equals to VLOOKUP, open brackets. I'm going to select the value which is going to be my lookup, comma. Now I want the table. I'm only going to select this part of the table here so we can see how we can use the bigger table later, comma. Now it's asking me the column index number. Now this essentially is asking me, your table consists of 2 columns, 1, 2, and 5 rows. The first column will be used automatically from the VLOOKUP to do the search, to match this value here, the lookup value. Which column do we want to return the answer from? Do we want to return the value back from column 1 or from column 2? Well, if I want the UK values, the levels, then I want column 2. So that's going to be column index number 2, comma. Now, the last parameter is this true or false. Do we want the VLOOKUP to do a range lookup, which is what we've been doing up until now, or do we want an exact match? We're going to look at the exact matches next, but what is the difference? A range lookup is when you've got a value and you want to find the value which is equal to it, or if not equal, as close as possible, but not larger. If you only want to find values in your lookup table which are exactly the same, so if you're looking for 59, you have to find the number 59 and not the closest possible match, then you're looking for an exact match. In this case, we're doing a range lookup. So we're going to click on approximate match. That one. So that's going to be true. And you could just type that in if you want, or you can click it. So we've got the value we're looking up. We've got the table which contains the lookup vector and the results vector in one go. We've got the column index number, which actually saying from that table, which column do we want to get the answers from? And then we're saying that this is going to be an approximate match or a range lookup. Press enter. And there's my result. Now, I haven't used absolute references. I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to select this table range, make that absolute, so I can copy this down. And that is my vertical lookup. Now, in the case that I wanted to use, instead of the UK results, I wanted to use return the Estonia results, for example. I can't do that with my function as it is, because here I'm saying that my table is only these two columns and Estonia is not part of it. So I'm going to change my function a bit. Let's delete that part. So for my table this time, I'm going to select from here and I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to press comma. Now remember that the lookup vector is always going to be the first column of your table. You don't have a choice in this with the VLOOKUP. Where we get the results from, however, we do have a choice. So in this case, I want to get the answers from column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to get the, actually no, we said Estonia, so 4. I want to get the answers from the Estonia column, and that's column number 4. So I'm going to put the column index number 4. I'm going to press comma, and again I want an approximate match, so true, and close my brackets. And let me just put here again absolute references. Okay, so you can see now it's returning the values from column 4, and if I copy that down, it will be the same for all of them. So it's getting the values from here. So the difference here is instead of choosing two vectors, you choose a table. The first column is used as the lookup column, and then you decide which column to use to return the results. The HLOOKUP function. Now the HLOOKUP function is exactly the same as before, but this time instead of choosing the column which has the results, we choose the row which returns the results. So let's do this one quickly. Equals to HLOOKUP this time. Open brackets. Again, the lookup value is the value that I'm looking up, comma. My table array, so this time again I'm going to choose a table. Here's my table. So this first row now is going to be used for the lookup row of the horizontal lookup function. With the VLOOKUP, the first column was being used for the lookup, comma. And now instead of column index number, we want the row index number. So in this case, I want to return the values, the levels for Cyprus. So that is row 1, 2, 3. So CY results are in row 3. So I need the row index number 3, comma. Again, I want an approximate match. So true. I'm going to close the brackets. And because I'm going to copy this down, I'm going to use F4 here to make that an absolute reference and press enter. Okay, there we go. And that's the HLOOKUP. Exactly the same as the VLOOKUP, you just have to understand that you're looking for the rows instead of the columns with the answers. And if you want to change the return row, so let's say you want Estonia, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, then I can just modify this, change that to a 4, press enter, and then copy that down. And those are my Estonia results. Okay, so now that we've finished with range lookups, let's have a look and see where the VLOOKUP falls short. And the same with the HLOOKUP. So the VLOOKUP falls short if your table looks like this. So we can see here the lookup value that we want now is on the right side of our table. It's not on the left. This makes it impossible to select my table and use this column as the lookup column. Remember, the VLOOKUP will use the first column for the lookup. This would also be the case if I had something like this. Let's say I wanted to use that column there for my lookup and it was in the middle, just like I showed you in this exercise, where I was looking for the book reference number and I returned the author. I wouldn't be able to do that with the VLOOKUP function. I can only do that with the lookup function, or if I modify my table by bringing this to the front. That's the only way. So this is exactly the same issue as well with the HLOOKUP. So the HLOOKUP, if what you're looking for is not the top row of the selection that you're going to use for the table, in other words, the results come after the lookup row, you can't use the HLOOKUP. You can, however, use the lookup feature, but only if you're doing a range lookup. Remember, the lookup function can only do range lookups or approximate matches. It can't do an exact match feature when it comes to text. So essentially the lookup only works with numbers. And because this is numbers, I'm just going to show you here. So if I was to do this, VLOOKUP, open bracket, would be good if I started with an equal sign, which actually means C43 equals to VLOOKUP. This is the value, comma. And if I choose this table now, there's no way of this working because I cannot separate the lookup vector and the results vector. So I'm going to change this to a lookup feature instead. So that's a lookup, and this is my lookup value. And here I am going to put comma. Now here I want the lookup vector, so this is my lookup vector, comma. And my results vector, let's say I want the UK one, that's the results vector. And you can see now, because the lookup separates the two vectors, you can choose irrespective of where the lookup vector is. And I'm just going to make these absolute. Close the brackets and press enter. Okay, and there we go. And the same goes for the HLOOKUP function as well. The only way you can use the HLOOKUP is if the row which has the values that you're going to be looking up, the lookup vector, is above the results vectors. Otherwise, you have to use a lookup function. Okay, so that's the lookup function, the VLOOKUP function, and the HLOOKUP function being used as approximate match or a range lookup. Let's go have a look at exact match. Okay, so here I've got another few tables here that we're going to use so we can understand the exact match. In this case, I've got my table up here where I've got a D code and a country. Here we can see we've got country codes, and here is the full name of the countries. In this column here, I want to place the name of the country based on what the code is. So for this one here, this is my lookup value, which is A12. I will go to my table, this one here. Automatically the VLOOKUP, this is a vertical lookup because we're going to be looking up vertically. Automatically the VLOOKUP function will use the first column for the lookup vector, and then we would tell it to get the results from column number 2. Now, we cannot use a lookup function for this. In fact, let's do that quickly. Equals to lookup, open brackets. I'm going to be looking up this value here. This is going to be my lookup vector, comma, and this is going to be my result vector. Now, remember we said the lookup function can only do approximate match or closest match or range lookup, whatever you want to call it. When I press enter, instead of returning UK, it returns Cyprus, and that's wrong. For UK, it should return United Kingdom. Now, I don't want to get into the details why it returns something which is wrong, but what you have to understand is lookup is only for range lookups using numbers. So for something like this, we're going to use the VLOOKUP equals to VLOOKUP, and it's exactly the same as before. There's no difference, but I had to demonstrate it for a complete tutorial. This is the value I'm going to be using. This is the table, so I'm going to select the whole table array. The table is only 2 columns, comma, and I'm going to get the answers from this table, which has 2 columns and 5 rows. I want the answers to come from column 2. So that's going to be column 2. This is that's column 1. This is column 2. And then comma. And the difference now is I don't want an approximate match. I want an exact match. In other words, it's only going to return a result if what I'm looking for is found in that first column and it's exactly the same. Close the brackets, press enter. And now I can copy that down. Well, I can't because I need to make it absolute references. So let me just do that so you can see that there. So if I click on there, I'm going to select my table, make that absolute, and now I can copy that down. So what happens if we put something which doesn't exist, for example, ZZ? We get an error. Okay, so this is an exact match. It will only return a value if something is found and it's exactly the same. Okay, now let's do the same for the HLOOKUP. I'm going to click in here. I want to calculate the amount of discount depending on the discount code. So that's going to be my lookup value. Here is my table with the lookup vector and the results vector. So I'm going to go to equals to HLOOKUP, open brackets. Here is my lookup value, press comma. Here's my table array, and I'm going to make that an absolute reference from now. Comma, and I want to get the results from row number 2 because that actually has a discount, and comma, and I have to put this to false. Now remember, we're searching for text here, we're not searching for numbers, and when we're searching for text you have to use false. You cannot have an approximate match or a range lookup. So I'm going to close the brackets, press enter, and here is the discount for each one. And if I wanted to calculate how much the discount is without creating another column, I could very easily use the result of the HLOOKUP, which is just a number at the end of the day, and simply put here multiplied by whatever's inside the purchase price. And now I can copy that down. So here, what it does, it uses the discount code, it goes to the lookup table, finds an exact match here, returns the value from row number 2, which is this one, and multiplies this value with the purchase price, and that's our result there. I want to demonstrate how we can link 2 workbooks. In other words, have the results spreadsheet in one workbook and have the table with the results vectors in a separate worksheet in another workbook. Because very often in Excel, we want to be linking across workbooks and worksheets. So let me show you how we can do this. Okay, so in this spreadsheet, we have some blank columns here that we want to fill in, and the information is going to be pulled through another workbook. Here's my other workbook. Let me just bring that over. Okay, so you can see I've got my other workbook here. It's called Sources. So I'm going to open this up as well. You must have the second workbook open when you're going to link over to it. And you can see this workbook has got 3 spreadsheets. I'm going to be using this one here, J9 location. Okay, so we can see in this J9 location, we've got the area code, the location, depending on the area code, and then the price per square foot. Let's just zoom that in a bit. All right, so let's go have a look and see how we're going to do this. So first of all, I want to find the location depending upon this area code. And that's going to be a simple VLOOKUP function. It's a VLOOKUP because my lookup here is vertical. You can see my area codes are going downwards. So I'm going to start off like this. Let's just expand that so you can see the whole thing. Equals to VLOOKUP open brackets. Now, first thing I need is my lookup value. My lookup value is going to be this area code, comma, and now I want my table array. I want the whole table. Now I need to go to my other workbook, select all of this. I'm going to select all 3 columns. I'm going to go down to the bottom. There we go. Okay, so I've selected the whole table. Now for the location, I didn't have to select this column as well because I only need 2 columns, the area code, this one here, and the location. But I'm going to select all 3. If we look at the top, we can see it's added the name of the workbook and the sheet, the name of the sheet that's being used. So this is the source is XLSX, and the sheet inside this workbook is J9 location. And this is the cell range A2 to C55. Notice that absolute references have automatically been added. Now, before I try to go anywhere else, let's say go back to my original spreadsheet, I must put a comma here, because if I don't, then it thinks I'm still trying to select the table array. Now I need to write which column from this table contains the answer. Well, for this one, I want the location name, so that's column 1, 2. And of course, since I am doing an exact match, doesn't matter if it's numbers, I don't want to return a number or a value unless it finds the exact area code. So that's going to be false. Close the brackets, press enter, and there we go. And now I can copy that down because I've got my absolute references. So exactly the same as before, only this time you need to be a little bit careful, especially if you're moving from one sheet to another. Let's do this last one here. Equals to VLOOKUP, open brackets. Again, I'm going to be using my area code, comma. I'm going to go to my other spreadsheet. Again, I'm going to select all 3 columns, but this time, oh, let's go up. Now let me just demonstrate what happens if you don't put that comma. If I then go back and click anywhere now, let's say I click here, can you see it's changed that table array? If I click in my other table over here to go back, it's got the wrong range. So I need to make sure, so let me just delete all that. The best way is make sure you're here, make sure you select your table array, and then press comma, and that simply says I finished working with the table array. Now I want to return the price per square foot, so that's column 3, 1, 2, 3, and then comma false because I want an exact match. Close the bracket, press enter. Now that's giving me the price. If I want to calculate the price multiplied by the square foot automatically, I'm going to simply put here times that value, and there you go. Automatically that's been calculated. So if this was to change from a 408 to 500 square feet, then automatically my cost there changes. Okay, I think it's time to go to the XLOOKUP. Okay, so before we start working and understanding the XLOOKUP function, let's understand why the XLOOKUP was created. What was the need? Well, essentially, it resolves all the fallbacks or issues the previous functions had. For example, the lookup function we saw is really good because we can have a separate lookup vector and a separate results vector, making it really easy and not having to worry about designing the table in a particular way. However, the lookup function will only allow approximate match or exact match providing it's using numbers. So you cannot do a lookup on text. The VLOOKUP function and the HLOOKUP function both resolve this issue, but you need to choose the right function. The fallback with these are that if you're doing a VLOOKUP, the lookup vector has to be to the left, the column which is the lookup has to be to the left of whatever results vector we're going to use. It cannot be to the right of that because it uses the very first column in that table as your lookup vector. The same goes with the HLOOKUP. The very first row is your lookup vector. So the lookup vector has to be above the results vectors. The good thing, however, with the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP is that we can do exact match on text. And we can do this when we select our, if we have a look here, we can do this because we set this parameter here to false. And this basically decides whether it's an exact match or an approximate match. So if it's true, it's going to be an approximate match like the lookup. And if it's false, then it's going to be an exact match. However, what it does not do is if you're using an exact match like this example here, it finds the code UK in this table and returns United Kingdom. If you look for something which is not in the table, for example, UY, you get this error. There is no way in the VLOOKUP or the HLOOKUP function to be able to return a specific value if a value is not found. Say, not found. Okay, so we can't do that. So all of these issues are resolved with the XLOOKUP. Let's look at the XLOOKUP function. I'm going to delete these here, press delete, and I'm going to do the same thing here using XLOOKUP. So equals to XLOOKUP, open brackets. And we can now see that we have many more parameters. Let's look at them one by one. So the first parameter is the lookup value. Well, that's just like before. I'm going to click on the value I want to look up, comma. Then what I want to do is I want the lookup array. The lookup array is just like the lookup function. We only select the column or the row which has the values we're going to be looking up. We don't need to specify whether it's a VLOOKUP or a HLOOKUP because just like the lookup function, you simply select that vector, or this time called an array. So I want this one here to be my lookup array, comma. Now it wants the return array, and just like the lookup function, we can now easily select the column which is going to return the value, comma. Now I'm just going to close that there for now, and I'm going to press enter, and you can see that that has automatically worked. That's fine, and I can put these to absolute references and copy that down. Okay, so the other parameters in the XLOOKUP are not a must when it comes to just doing a quick lookup. But let's look at the other parameters as well. We're going to do that using, I think, this table here, because it's just, let's just get rid of that. It's not going to be the VLOOKUP. And we're going to use this table here because we've got more columns to work with. So equals to XLOOKUP, open brackets. Again, this time we're going to be looking up this value here, comma. The lookup array is going to be this one. I'm going to make that absolute from now. Then I want my results or the return array. Let's say I want to have the values from Estonia, only because they're not together. And make that absolute. Now let's have a look at the other parameters. So the next parameter is, what should we put if a value is not found? So if it's not found, then I'm going to put speech marks, not found. Just as easy as that. So I'm just going to put some text. I can return a value, I can return a cell reference, I can return a function if I like. But I'm just going to put not found, comma. Now the next one is, do I want this lookup to be an exact match? Do I want it to be exact match or next smaller item, because it's numeric? Exact match or next larger item? Look at all these options. A wildcard character match. Well, I'm just going to go for exact match or next smaller item, because that represents exactly the same as what we were doing before. If it doesn't find the match, I want it to find the one that's closest but smaller. If you wanted to though go higher, go above, then you could use exact match or next larger item. So I just want to use that one there. Double click on it, and that's the -1, comma. Now the next one is search first to last, search last to first, binary search. I'm not going to go through all of these. It really doesn't make so much difference if you've got an incrementing value or if your table is using unique numbers. So I'm just going to put search first to last. However, if you do have repeating values and you want to find the one closest to the bottom, then you will go last to first. I don't really see where that's needed. I'm sure there's a use for it somewhere, but usually we look in a table going from top to bottom. And if it's a horizontal, then we go from left to right. Okay, so I'm just going to close my brackets there, press enter, and there we go. And I can now copy that down. That is the XLOOKUP. Now I'm going to show you another quick feature, which is called the spill. And I'm just going to modify this so you can see what the spill is. So what I'm going to do now is this. Here where I select, if I want to find the grades of all of these students, then I would normally write the formula like I did here, and then I will use the fill handle to fill in the rest. With the new spill feature, however, I can do this. Instead of just choosing the one lookup value, this one here, I can now choose all of these. Okay, and now when I press enter, it will automatically calculate and find the rest for you. Now, a couple of things here. Let's just undo that. If I have some text here, I don't know, let's say I've got my name in here, and I try to use the spill feature now, you're going to get a spill error. So let's just modify that. So instead of looking for one, I'm going to look for all of these and press enter. You see you get a spill error, and that's because there is one of the cells which is required to overflow in and put some results in has got something inside, and that's why you will get that spill error. So if I delete this now, automatically it will fill in the rest for me. The other disadvantage to using the spill for me is you only see the formula in the first one. The rest, if you try and copy this formula down, you won't see that formula here. Can you see? So that's only available in the first one, and that's logical because you've used the first one to create that function and produce the spill and enable that spill feature. Okay, we're going to do the horizontal as well using the XLOOKUP, and that will be it for this tutorial. So equals to XLOOKUP, open brackets, I'm going to be looking up this function, comma. Now my lookup array is horizontal. It's going to understand this immediately. So I'm just going to make that absolute. My return array, let's say this time is going to be the UK one. Make that absolute, comma. And now it's going to ask me, if not found, I'm just going to put speech marks, not found, and then comma, and it's going to ask exact match or small or next smaller item. I'm just going to put smaller item, exact or smaller, comma, and then search first to last. Now here it's automatically going to go from left to right or right to left, and I'm just going to double click on that one. Let me just make sure I did this one correct. Match marks. Let's just press enter, and here it says not found, and that's because I made a little mistake here. I did realize that I put here 0 instead of -1. So here I did exact match. Can you see? So if I put exact match or next smaller, there we go, that would work, and I can copy that down. Okay, and again you can use the spill feature if you want. instead of choosing the 1, I'm going to want to fill in for all of these and press enter. Okay, and the not found we didn't demonstrate. So let's say I've got a value here, although this is the next to smaller, it won't actually work. But if I change this to an exact match, so exact match is this parameter here, I'm going to change it to exact match. So it's only going to return values if it finds an exact match. And you can see here now, instead of displaying NA, it actually displays what you want. Okay. That's it. I hope you've learned something. If you have, make sure to subscribe, make sure you click like, and I'll see you again in the next tutorial. Take care, bye-bye.